For over 400 years, the Israelites endured harsh slavery in Egypt under Pharaoh. Hearing their cries, God raised Moses to lead them to freedom. With mighty miracles, he parted the Red Sea, allowing his people to cross on dry ground while their enemies were swept away. As they journeyed through the wilderness, God fed them with manna from heaven and brought life-giving water from a rock. After years of faith, testing, and divine guidance, they finally stood at the threshold of the promised land, Canaan, the inheritance God had promised to their ancestors. Earlier, after God had delivered them through the Red Sea, Miriam, the sister of Moses and Aaron, led the women with tambourines and dancing, singing, "Sing to the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously." It was a joyful declaration that God had defeated their enemies and set his people free. During their journey, God also called Moses to Mount Sinai, where he gave him the 10 Commandments, establishing his covenant and teaching Israel how to live as his holy nation. Their celebration was not only for reaching the promised land but also for the gift of God's presence, guidance, and his holy law. Bread appeared on the ground each morning like frost, and they called it manna. What is it? Water broke from stone when there should have been none. In the emptiest place, they were fed. After 400 years in bondage, the children of Israel went out of Egypt, a mixed multitude, with flocks and herds, journeying into a wilderness no map could hold. At their head walked 2 brothers, Moses, called by God at the burning bush, and Aaron, his voice and his priest. Together they led a nation that did not yet know what it meant to be free. The way was long, and the wilderness gave no comfort. Yet a pillar of cloud went before them by day, and a pillar of fire by night, God's presence, visible even in the barren places. In the 3rd month after Israel came out of Egypt, on that very day, they came to the wilderness of Sinai. And there, before a mountain wrapped in silence, they camped. Tribe by tribe, they settled in the mountain's shadow, not knowing that what waited above them would shape their nation forever. "Go to the people and consecrate them," God commanded, "and let them wash the garments. Set limits around the mountain, whoever touches it shall be put to death." So the people made themselves ready to meet the God. On the morning of the 3rd day there were thunders and lightnings, and a thick cloud on the mountain. Mount Sinai was wrapped in smoke, because the Lord had descended on it in fire, and the whole mountain trembled greatly. A trumpet blast sounded, louder and louder, until all the people in the camp trembled. They stood at the foot of the mountain, and dared not come closer. Then Moses went up into the mountain, and a cloud covered it, and the glory of the Lord settled there. And Moses entered into the midst of the cloud, and was on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights.
God called Moses to climb the mountain and meet with him. Moses remained on Mount Sinai for 40 days and 40 nights, fasting in the presence of the Lord as God revealed his holy laws and covenant for the people of Israel. During that sacred time, God himself wrote the 10 Commandments on 2 stone tablets with his own finger, giving Moses the divine law that would guide his people for generations. When Moses later descended the mountain, he carried these tablets as a sign of God's covenant with Israel.
"I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me." The 2nd commandment, "You shall not make for yourself a carved image, or any likeness of anything in heaven above, or on the earth beneath. You shall not bow down to them or serve them." The 3rd commandment, "You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless who takes his name in vain." The 4th commandment, "Remember the Sabbath day, to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the 7th day is a Sabbath." The 5th commandment, "Honor your father and your mother, that your days may be long in the land the Lord your God is giving you." The 6th commandment, "You shall not murder. This is by loving your neighbor as you love yourself." The The 7th commandments, you shall not commit adultery. The 8th commandments, you shall not steal. You shall not take anything that is not yours and make it yours without the owner's consent. The 9th commandments, you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. The 10th commandment, you shall not covet your neighbor's house, his wife, his servants, his ox, his donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. God himself wrote these commandments and gave them to Moses on a tablet. Meanwhile, down below at the plains of Mount Sinai, all the people saw the thunderings and the mountain smoking, and they trembled and stood far off.
When the people saw that Moses delayed to come down from the mountain, they gathered themselves to Aaron and said, Up, make us gods who shall go before us. As for this Moses, we do not know what has become of him. Aaron gathers a pile of golden earrings and ornaments brought by the people. So Aaron said to them, Take off the rings of gold that are in the ears of your wives, your sons, and your daughters, and bring them to me. And all the people took off the rings and brought them to Aaron. He received the gold from their hand and fashioned it with a graving tool, and made it into a molten calf. And they said, These are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt. When Aaron saw this, he built an altar before it, and Aaron made proclamation and said, Tomorrow shall be a feast to the Lord. The Lord spoke to Moses, Go down, for your people have corrupted themselves. The tablets were the work of God, and the writing was the writing of God, engraved on the tablets. Now let me alone, that my wrath may burn hot against them. But Moses pleaded, and the Lord relented. When Joshua heard the noise of the people as they shouted, he said to Moses, There is a noise of war in the camp. But Moses said, It is not the sound of victory, nor the sound of defeat, it is the sound of singing that I hear. As soon as he came near the camp, he saw the calf and the dancing. And Moses' anger burned hot. Moses was really angered and couldn't believe his eyes that the same people who were delivered by God are now worshipping other gods. He threw the tablets out of his hands and broke them at the foot of the mountain. As Moses descended Mount Sinai carrying the stone tablets written by God's own hand, his heart was filled with hope for Israel's future. He believed the people were waiting faithfully below. But instead, he would soon discover that they had turned away from the very God who had rescued them from Egypt, replacing worship with a golden calf. What began as a joyful journey down the mountain would become a heartbreaking moment of betrayal, testing Moses' faith, leadership, and compassion.
Do you hear that sound rising from the camp below? It sounds like a roar, yet there is no storm in the sky. Do not look back, for our path forward is all that matters.
The Lord spoke to Moses, Go down, for your people have corrupted themselves. The tablets were the work of God, and the writing was the writing of God, engraved on the tablets. Now let me alone, that my wrath may burn hot against them. But Moses pleaded, and the Lord relented. When Joshua heard the noise of the people as they shouted, he said to Moses, There is a noise of war in the camp. But Moses said, It is not the sound of victory, nor the sound of defeat, it is the sound of singing that I hear. As soon as he came near the camp, he saw the calf and the dancing. And Moses' anger burned hot. Moses was really angered and couldn't believe his eyes that the same people who were delivered by God are now worshipping other gods. He threw the tablets out of his hands and broke them at the foot of the mountain. Then he took the calf they had made and burned it with fire, ground it to powder, and scattered it on the water. Moses said to Aaron, What did this people do to you, that you have brought such a great sin upon them? And Aaron said, Let not the anger of my Lord burn hot. I cast the gold into the fire, and out came this calf. Moses returned to the Lord and said, Oh, this people has sinned a great sin. But now, please forgive their sin, but if not, please blot me out of your book that you have written. The Lord said to Moses, Cut 2 tablets of stone like the first, and I will write on them the words that were on the first tablets. Moses did not know that the skin of his face shone, because he had been talking with God. These are the commandments the Lord gave to Israel on Mount Sinai.